Host Ryan Ruff, joined as always by the star of our show, Homer Smith, private wealth advisor of Konvergent Wealth Partners. Homer, new year, new episode. Great to have you aboard. Excited to get into things today with you.
Yeah, glad to be here, Ryan, and Happy New Year to you as well. Excited for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of interesting things going on in the world. That's to say the least right now. Obviously, New Year brings on a whole new batch of hope for what was such a tumultuous 2020. And obviously, what 2021 brings is a lot of questions. A lot of questions for families when it comes to their finances and what can be done. Just to pick out of a hat in terms of issues and things that would make you keep your cards close to your hand versus opening up. The new administration coming in is going to leave a lot of questions as to what the taxing will look like, what some smart and unsmart financial decisions will look like. Also, the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. We're seeing states across the country already moving into, further phases where, public education folks are getting their vaccination. So we're progressing in so many ways, shapes, and forms. An economic boom is inevitable. It's just when. And I think that is really keeping a lot of affluent families guessing and wondering, what comes next? When does that boom happen here in 21? So we've got a great episode here for you today. Who are joining us, we're going to dive into this question and this concept about what makes a financial advisor who's good great. What brings them to that next level to be the one that you should be working with, like our friends like Homer over at Konvergent Wealth Partners. So Homer, really to bat lead off and to kick things off here, we all know that successful families and business owners, they want to make sure that they have the best of the best as their financial advisor. The individual that has that technical expertise to guide them towards the right decisions based on their estate, based on their goals, yada, yada. But sometimes that technical expertise just isn't enough. Sometimes they should be asking for more out of their financial advisor. Could you care to explain why they should be demanding more than just that expertise in this field?
Yeah, and I think to your point, that you talked about all the things coming in 2021 and off of this crazy year in 2020, and really, I think one of the most important things a financial advisor can do, and what the way we speak about it is really helping quiet the noise. There's so much noise out there. But in reality, our clients have these complex goals and needs, and it really requires a higher level of knowledge to address beyond just that technical expertise that you mentioned. And, there's a lot of great, technically excellent advisors and consultants out there that really know their area of focus extremely well. But oftentimes we find that, the clients that work with them, they feel like there's something missing, and they're not getting all of what they want and need out of those relationships. There's something missing there, that between that brilliant advisor and client that's holding the client back in some way. In reality, we believe there's a key ingredient that these advisors are missing that really could unlock their ability to better serve investors with significant wealth, because the way we look at it is, elite wealth planning really needs to go beyond just mere technical expertise.
Sure. And so when it comes to that missing link, in your eyes, Homer, because I'm sure, it's a trickle down effect there over at Konvergent. I'm sure you guys practice what you preach. What is that missing link?
Yeah, the most common missing link that we see far and away is what we call the human element. And based on what I've seen, every wealth manager really needs to be exceptionally good at bringing this human element to everything they do on behalf of their clients. And really, it's something, even after 19 years in this industry, it's an area that I've recognized that, is an area of constant improvement that I need to be working on every single day.
Sure. It comes down to even your waiter at a restaurant. If you can have a conversation with them, you're going to have a more enjoyable dining experience. It's just that human element that we tend to sometimes forget about, when it comes to our engagements in different aspects of our life. But it really is what makes us comfortable with working with an individual and putting our dollars and cents that we work so hard for, putting them towards them and allowing them to care for us in this instance. So when you say, Homer, this human element, not to really jump into the weeds, but to do so, what are we talking about here? Take me through what that human element entails in your eyes.
Yeah, so the human element, as I define it, it's the personal and it's the emotional components of wealth management. It's truly understanding everyone and everything that's important to you as a client, and everyone and everything that's going to be affected by your decisions. It's taking that understanding and then using that as a basis for making a broad range of decisions about your entire financial picture.
Right.
So in other words, the human element is really all about helping ensure that the choices you make financially really account for and reflect your values, your goals, and really who you are as a person.
Sure. I mean, there isn't a cookie cutter approach to managing an affluent family's finances. We talked last episode about insurance pitfalls and things that you want to make sure that you have covered. So there's that risk factor to it. Then there's the goal setting elements, and then obviously the stress testing that's constantly ongoing. There's so many elements that are taking place and so many key and important conversations that have to happen about your money. I mean, it's arguably the most important thing that will help you preserve your legacy and your family's legacy moving forward. And when it comes to this human element and this human aspect, why is it so important specifically on the wealth management side? Not just necessarily for creating a connection, maybe luring a new client in, but really their wealth management. Once they're an existing client, keeping them happy. Why is that human element so important?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of why we believe it's so important for wealth managers to really incorporate this human element into their planning. And working with a wealthy entrepreneur, they wanted to really look at their overall succession plan and their wealth plan and see how it might result under various scenarios. And to your point, the terminology we use for this is called a stress test. And what the stress test revealed was that there'd been some really big changes in the family dynamic since the last time that they had updated their estate plan and their succession plan. And unfortunately, the most likely scenario in the event of the business owner's death would be that there'd be some all-out war between the four kids.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the worst case scenario would be the potential death knell to an 80-year-old family business. And as we kept digging deeper, what we also recognized was that the way that this business owner thought about inheritance was more from an equality standpoint versus fairness. And what that means, it's not good or bad. It just means that they're more focused on making sure that the estate was split completely equally, including the company, even though only one of the kids was heavily involved in the business as its current president. And so that was a big issue identified. And also we recognized that between the family itself, there was a real lack of trust and a lack of communication between the parents and the kids, and especially amongst the kids themselves. And so what that really created was this issue where everybody was more focused on the family wealth than being focused on the family harmony.
Sure, sure. So there you go. A perfect example of how the human element can come into play. Yes, it's dollars and cents that you're working with, but it's people. It's their relationships within their family. Obviously, there's a history that it goes back to the day that some of these people were born. It's stuff that you don't know as a financial advisor unless you ask those right questions. You get into the weeds of their family dynamic to understand everything that they need. And Homer, you bring up a great point. It's not just also going through that human element on the wealth management side, but it starts at the beginning. It starts with what you had mentioned, the stress test, and going through that process. So, why do you believe that human element plays such a particularly important role during that stress testing process at the beginning?
Yeah, well, even back to that case that we were just speaking to, bringing that intense focus on the human element back into that family really allowed them to focus on rebuilding trust, rebuilding communication amongst the family. And only after doing that were they able to really address the overall estate plan and kind of go beyond just the technical tax planning strategies and asset protection strategies. Because the reality was that the plan that they had in place prior to that was working just fine. It was only once this recognition came about that they had these family dynamic changes that were going on, was it important to really bring that relationship component into the plan and go beyond just that those technical solutions. So, back to the stress test by itself and why that's so important is that it's really the systematic way to evaluate whether your plan is positioned to get you the results that you want and that you expect. And also, it's a way to look at whether there's meaningful opportunities that might be missed by your current wealth plan. And, oftentimes we find when we're doing these stress tests that when it was initially set up, technically it was fine, from an overall implementation situation. But just like the business owner that we talked about, it was changes in their personal situation that kind of made the existing plan obsolete. And so that's really what we see oftentimes is not so much that there was errors in the setup, is that just things change over time.
Sure, sure. And this is an interesting situation in that, yeah, there's a whole family dynamic of a business ownership that falls into play as well. That's all, that can be a sticky situation in some instances for sure. So now when it comes to this stress testing process, obviously it's an audit. It really is an opportunity for you guys to dive deep into the finances and take a 10,000 foot view approach at their goals and where they want to go with their lives based on their current situation. When you guys do a stress test process, I would imagine it's obviously a very rigorous process. We had talked about it at length during our inaugural episode. Do you ever go through the stress test process and find that there are just no problems at all?
Yeah, I would say it's almost as common that as we complete the stress test process that we find that everything is on track, including the human element side, and really finding no problems can be quite comforting,
Sure.
especially if you were going into that process with some level of uncertainty about what to expect.
hmm So obviously we can see how important that human aspect is when it comes into the wealth management side of things. But do you assess whether a wealth manager cares about or uses, that human element with his or her clients? It seems pretty easy to tell if an advisor is technically great, but it's harder to size them up on that human element. So how do you know if they've got it, that intrinsic value?
Yeah, I think the best way to make this assessment when talking to your wealth manager is to, have some deep discussions and identify, are they more focused on products or are they more focused on you? The financial solutions that we utilize for our clients are just merely tools.
hmm
And whether that tool is going to be the right tool to solve your problem is really dependent on your own situation, your values, your goals, your challenges, your concerns. And so, it's important to understand, is the advisor you're working with more focused on the mechanics, the small details of a particular solution, like the different terms of a trust,
hmm
or are they more focused on getting to know you as a person? If the focus is on you, they're going to be really focused on outcomes and really helping you reach your goals that are most important to you and your family. I think that's probably the best way to tell.
It goes back to that custom tailored plan. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It is a thought out, in depth custom plan that starts with that thorough stress test. So let's play a little game of hypotheticals here, Homer. If you're an investor or a business owner and you're looking towards this advisor process and you're maybe vetting a few, you're thinking about who to go with. What do you want to see in your advisor? What would give you the confidence to say, that's my guy, that's my girl, to go forward and work with somebody based on that initial vetting process? Or rather, how would you vet someone if you were a business owner?
Yeah, I think the clearest sign that an advisor, walks the talk when it comes to this human element is, do they have a formal process, an approach to get to know you on a deep level? We call it our discovery process, but it's a number of questions that dives deep into your situation, and not just what might appear to be a random set of questions.
Sure, sure. Because it'll allow you. I mean, one question leads to two to three, and a thorough conversation within that. So, totally understandable there. Now, what would a good or really thorough process involve? Especially from this human element perspective. What does that process look like? Or I guess, what does your discovery process look like?
Yeah, clearly it has to go beyond just simple questions around, what stocks and mutual funds you might be invested in, or what your net worth is. It really needs to go into things like, what are your most important values, which leads to, how do you make financial decisions? It goes deep into your goals, not just around, again, money, but, family members and other people in the community that are important to you and causes that you care about. We need to be curious about your interests and kind of what drives you day to day and what things you enjoy, as well as even being curious about, how do you want to work with your advisor? How involved in the process do you really want to be? So it needs to be, more focused again on the entire picture and get to know the entire person that you are, rather than just looking at you as an account.
Sure, sure. Homer, we've really hammered home the importance of this human element. Obviously, it dives deep into understanding the individual, the family, their finances, their business, their goals. It is a full and thorough approach. I feel like a broken record saying the word thorough, but it really is. So, as we kind of maybe bring this to a head here, are there any other very important aspects when it comes to delivering on that promise of providing a human value or a human element rather, because I'm sure the human element is an expression and a phrase we all know. It's tossed around in a lot of different businesses across a lot of different sectors these days. But to you, are there any other important aspects on delivering on that promise of a human element?
Yeah, I think, just as important as this, discovery process, these questions that we ask during that process, we really need to make sure that we're truly listening and then incorporating those answers, into the wealth plan itself. For example, if we were to go through a stress test, typically we're going to uncover a number of different areas, needs, concerns, opportunities through that process. But if our instinct as advisors is to try to solve everything at once. We see all these opportunities. We want to get to the heart of it and really help, create, solve the puzzle. But the problem is that can be overwhelming to a client, especially if the reason they came in to see us in the first place was that there might be some dramatic or large change in their personal or their financial situation. And by throwing so much at them at once, it could lead to them just getting stuck in the mud on the issue that was most important to them. And so, at the end of the day, we're obviously going to solve all of those needs and address all of those concerns over time. But really, the most important component is that we're listening well. We're really understanding what is the most important key issue for that client at that time, and then solving that first, and really getting that big issue that's holding them back out of the way. And we can only do that by really focusing on this human element side and getting to know them on a deep level.
Right. It's like you're avoiding the old phrase, biting off more than you could chew. You want to make sure that your client feels welcomed and appreciated, but you want to take kind of a tactical approach to making sure that that big issue that's looming in their mind is chipped away at, not necessarily overwhelming them with this massive decision that they have to make. Oh, and not to mention in arguably one of the most financially tumultuous times that we've seen in our lifetime. So a lot of questions and a lot of answers, though, that are out there, especially when it comes to the folks at Convergent Wealth Partners. So, Homer, for those that are watching, for those that will be listening, if they're hearing these questions, they're listening about, to your thoughts on the right way to do it, the right way that the human element should be coming into play when it comes to wealth management. If I'm sitting here and I'm listening and thinking, hey, 21 might bring that economic boom that we are so longing for. Maybe this is a good time to sit down and talk with somebody about, my financial goals, my retirement, my, getting my kids through college, X, Y, and Z. Maybe, where would you point them to the right, to the right direction to touch base with your team and get started on the process?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, we think everybody would benefit from a stress testing process. So again, even if it ended up showing that everything was okay and you're very likely to be on track for all of your goals and needs, taking the time to go through that process, I think would be valuable.
Sure.
To your point, we do see that there's a likelihood that we could see some economic upside, especially in the first half of this year. But there's still a lot of uncertainty out there around the vaccines, around what this is all going to look like. And so just making sure that you can look at multiple scenarios and how that might impact your financial situation and whether you will be able to stay on track is, I think, it's as important as it ever has been right now. So obviously, we would love to be a part of that process for you and coming to our website at convergentwealth.com. We've got opportunities to sign up for an initial consultation where we can walk you through that process and get to know you a little bit and just determine, is there are we able to bring some meaningful value to your situation? So we'd love that opportunity to talk with you. So definitely visit the website and sign up for that initial meeting. We'd love to talk to you.
Well, there you have it, folks. I mean, great advice from one of the one of the top individuals over there at Convergent Wealth Partners. So Homer, again, this has been a great episode diving into some of these factors as to what makes a good financial advisor a great one. So I really appreciate you jumping on board, sharing your information with the folks out there. We're really looking forward to what's going to be a great 2021 in terms of our episodes moving forward on this show, as well as the topics that we're going to be covering. For those that are tuning in and looking forward to the future episodes, we don't have a date just yet as to what that February episode will be, but we'll certainly be posting about it on the Convergent Wealth Partners Facebook page as well as the website. There will be updates